All right, it's great to see all you guys here. Thanks for being here. My name is Sorell, Raino, so I happen to be leading this workshop tonight. I really appreciate your presence. It means the world to me to have so many amazing Oakland artists in the house. A lot of people I know, a lot of people I don't know, which is very encouraging for me. So the Cultural Strategist program that we're doing here is really a city-funded program that is to help artists learn and engage with the city in public art. But before I go into all that, I just want to introduce you to Roberto Bedoya, who is the Cultural Affairs Manager of the City of Oakland, to say a few words about the program.
I'm really happy to see all of you. And let me just talk a little bit about our Cultural Strategist government program. Sorell's part of 11 individuals that are currently in City Hall, working at a variety of departments, as thought partners. I mean that they're not necessarily there to make things, though everybody does make things and artists make things, but to actually think about how to do the job better. I recall last time when we did that pilot program, talking to the head of the Department of Transportation at that time. And we were talking about what would you do if you had an artist in your shop? And he was telling me, and I said, I don't want them to paint a mural on the asphalt or a utility box. I want them to work with you to figure out how you move through town. That's what a thought partner is, and that's what a cultural strategist is. So with the Mellon support, the cultural strategist came out of the cultural plan, and in that document we created about 4 years ago, we were trying to figure out what can we do to make artists more engaged with the city. The cultural plan is called Belonging in Oakland. So how do you operationalize belonging? What better community than artists to do it? So we were able to secure some money from the Mellon Foundation that allowed us to support the 11 artists that are here today. And what I'm especially happy with the partnership between Sorell and Kristen, Zaremba, our public art person. You don't know how many times my joke is that people call me up, I pick up the phone, they're surprised to get me, and they think I'm an ATM machine or God, and they start with their list of what they want. And I listen, my job is to listen. But to do the things that you need to do to help move things forward. And with Sorell sort of working in our shop is really to look at diversity, people of color in the field of public art. And I will editorialize to say that the field of public art is dominated by whiteness and men. So we gotta break that cycle. And you need to build your muscle and through these workshops be able to sort of feel how to just be a little more competitive. What was the word you used? What was it?
Educate, train, and develop.
Educate, train, and develop. So here's the team. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roberto. So the Cultural Affairs Division is a large division in the city, and that's the head of it. So just so you know, we're happy to have him here. Okay, so because there's a lot of people here that don't know me, I want to just kind of give you guys a quick overview of who I am and why I'm in this position. So I started, first of all, let me just say I'm an artist. This is my partner, Trent. He's an artist. Erica's in the back over there. That's the ABG team. So, we're artists forward, we're in the field, we're committed, we're painting, we have our own practices, and we understand what it is to be an artist. Both my parents are artists, grew up in a struggling artist home, so I get it. I started in Oakland first as a galleryist. I had a gallery called LQV Gallery and then Athens B Gallery, some shows that we did there. And really started working with a lot of muralists, street artists, doing mural productions. Did a lot of murals in downtown, around the Bay Area, San Francisco, a lot of public art. and then kind of evolved, like as we all do, into more dynamic pieces, more sculptural pieces, fusing mediums, getting beyond just murals and doing other things with it. And also, yeah, you see me and ZAQ there. I just have a long history of working with Oakland artists, and particularly artists of color, just organically, just from being out here in Oakland and making things happen. And so I think that made me a good fit for this program. But specifically, this slide right here is a really good example. What we've done well is work with artists that are I don't want to say emerging, you could be established or whatever, but you might be a painter or a muralist, and help you develop ways and ideas to get into more permanent public art pieces. And so this piece here by Jet, we did the mural in 2016, and we did the public art piece in 2019. And that is a direct kind of evolution and experiment, really, of being an artist that primarily does murals, primarily paints, and having the vision and the ability to take that into the next realm of permanent public art. So that's a bit about me and why I'm a good fit for the Cultural Strategist program for public art, and why I'm here today leading this workshop. And I want to introduce Kristen Zaremba, who is the public arts manager. I call her the manager, sorry. This is coordinator, public art coordinator for the City of Oakland Cultural Affairs Department. So please introduce.
Hi everyone. I'm really excited to be here tonight and to see all of you here. As you've already heard from Roberto and Sorell, we're a shop committed to supporting artists and the arts in Oakland. I've worked in public art for over 20 years, dating myself a little bit. Since 2005 with the City of Oakland, I worked in San Francisco before that. And again, like most people that are arts administrators, I started out as an artist, a mark maker, really, never say a muralist, not working on that scale. But found really that I wanted to bring art beyond the museum and the gallery walls. And that's what was compelling and exciting to me. And so I just kept getting bigger and bigger. And I always talk about a story of going into, I think we all have stories about amazing murals that, we just encounter on the streets. But the public art program, and part of what we're going to talk about tonight, is really structured by an ordinance that was adopted by the city in 1989. Which sets aside 1.5% for public art on new construction, city construction projects. And a really great example of that, which was not even an Oakland example, but that really resonated with me, was when the San Francisco Public Library moved into, it was the renovation of what's now the Asian Art Museum, and the library was built next to it. And there was art on every floor. And I thought, how did this get here? You don't see this normally just walking into a library. And it was because there was a program on the books that basically says you have to spend money on art as a part of this construction. And as we all know, sometimes that's what makes it actually happen. So that's what drew me into the field. And I've been working in Oakland for, again, too many years. But we have a couple of examples of projects that we've done over the years. And these are really just the permanent works. We do help facilitate a lot of temporary projects as well. So yeah, this project was completed in 2019. Johanna Potek, who's another Oakland-based muralist, but also has been doing public art for decades. And it's out in East Oakland. Give me 1 second, I won't take too long. But this is the Rainbow Recreation Center, which was an existing recreation center but was renovated, and the art opportunity was one where it's like you could do it on the front of the building, but because the funding was bond funding, we'll talk about that later, it has to be defined as permanent, and also something that we wouldn't be calling a muralist to come out and repaint it once a week because it's on international, and things happen there. So Johanna is a great example of someone that we could talk about in future workshops who translated her medium to permanent materials. And in this case, it's glass mosaic, which she then, rendered her composition and digitally, and then worked with the fabricator to have that translated into a material that's much easier to maintain, which comes up a lot in public art for the city. So I just like to show this example, and of course she also worked with kids from the recreation center, and these were a couple of the women who were a part of our selection process and really shepherded the project through. So sorry, you can go on now, thanks. We also sometimes have funding for projects that are in parks. In this case, this is again an artist team that started out doing temporary performative conceptual works, Wow House, and they've really migrated into doing, again, site-specific works, but that get translated into materials like bronze, right? So in the rain garden is Snow Park. Mosaics, another example of how an artist is moved from, it's still a 2D application, but into materials that really can work for a lot of what, city and builders are worried about when we think about how to make something really be resilient, but also front and center of the building, right? I mean, this is on the front of the fire station on Bancroft, I think it's 50th. Here's an example of two local murals, Daniel Galvez, based here in Oakland, and Josh Sanchez, who worked with the architectural design team to create a mural composition that they painted on the sunscreen metal panels in their studio before they were installed. So it's a big lift. You got to get in at the front end of the project in order for something like this to, really be successful. But that's what we're here to do. That's what I do. I think that's it. Yeah.
So let me just stop there for a minute. And I think what we really are trying to let you guys know through looking at some of those projects, especially like when you look at that Rainbow Rec Center mosaic piece, any one of you probably feel like you could have designed that piece. Not that it's a good or bad piece, it's a great piece. What I'm saying is if you're a painter or just an artist or an illustrator, that doesn't mean you can't get into public art. This is a field. This is a type of work that you can do. You just have to get the education and the training and the development and the confidence to go after it in that way. And that's really what we're trying to do here, is to help a new wave of Oakland artists, a new crop of artists to really compete at this level. It's like Roberto alluded to, it's been kind of this recurring group of artists that are getting most of the projects, and we want to change that. We want to really open the doors and get more people involved, newer blood that have new ideas that are willing to compete. But it's a tough field, and it takes a lot of strength and patience and guts and vision. But when you look at some of those pieces, it's just translating your work into mediums that are deemed permanent. And so when we talk about public art in Oakland, I think a lot of people are like, yeah, art's everywhere, there's murals everywhere, and that's true. But most of those murals are not actual city-funded public art projects. And most of them are not deemed permanent public art. And so when the city funds a project or a developer funds a project, they're looking for permanent public art. And sometimes that can be a mural. It doesn't mean murals are excluded, but it's rare. It's rare that it's a mural, because a mural can fade and degrade and get blasted by graffiti and have all kinds of other problems. And so it's about translating your work into these other mediums, like mosaics, like sculptures, like reliefs, these other mediums that are permanent. But just because you're a painter or a muralist doesn't mean you can't do that. You can. You just have to know what resources are available for you and who you can partner with. A lot of public art is about partnership. There's fabricators, there's installers, there's project managers. It's about pulling all these things together and really being that sole leader of the team. You have to be the visionary that has the idea, but you don't have to make everything yourself. All of these projects were not handmade by the artists. I mean, sometimes, but you don't have to be some legacy sculptor to compete at this level. You have to have the vision and the organization and the professional standards to really, pull a team together and lead a team to head a project like these. These are typically big projects. Murals kind of come and go, and I'm sure a lot of you have done murals, and I've done murals for $500, and I've done murals for $50,000. So there's a big range in murals, but these permanent projects are typically larger budgets, and so you have a larger budget to fabricate, to install, and that's why the mediums have to be permanent, because they're not going to fund a $200,000 project for you to just paint a mural that fades in the sun and then degrades and chips off. It has to be something that's going to last, like the building will last, and be there and can withstand the elements and last through time. So that's really why we're here tonight, is to try to, educate you guys on what's available to you, how the public art system works with the city, where things come from the city, and how we can all work together better. And I also just want to say, Roberto, you might not want to hear this, but we're here to help you guys work with the city better. But at the same time, we understand that the city cannot provide the amount of projects, that you guys all need to survive. So this workshop is not just about working with the city. It's about professional standards, so you can take these tools and go get a job in New York or LA or with some other developer or some private company or whatever. We want to give you guys the tools, yes, to work with the city, but to better yourselves, to educate yourselves on what's available to you so you can go get jobs wherever. We want to see Oakland artists getting into the higher professional ranks, not just in Oakland. So we're here for all of those reasons. We want you to understand how to work with the city better, but there is a big professional development element to what we're trying to do. All right, so just to be clear too, what we're doing here tonight is giving you guys an overview of this program. So we're not actually gonna dive into all the stuff tonight. I wanted to invite as many people as I could to come and hear what we have to say. And you can decide if you want to do the whole workshop or not. But we're going to just talk through all the things that we're going to dive into in this workshop series. Starting with civics. Where do these city projects come from? When does the city need a project? How does the city promote these projects? Where do you look to interface with the city when they have a project? Maybe you could give us some examples of where city projects come from.
Well, as I mentioned before, because of the ordinance that is on the books, whenever there is a new building or other type of facility, like a park that's being constructed by the city, is required to set aside 1.5% of the budget for public art to be associated with that project. It is true that sometimes that's not practical, and if the funding allows, that we will pool it with funding from other projects to maybe do something that's off-site. But for the most part, it is new construction. So new fire station is going in. We're working on a project that is part of the reimagining, really, of Tyrone Kearney Park that's at Deep East Oakland by the border, and it's a park that's been closed for 20 years. The community actually did the fundraising and raised the grant money, but it includes a set aside for a memorial to Tyrone Kearney. It's a very interesting story. The point is, there was a commission, and in that case, it was by invitation. But typically speaking, when we have money for a project, it has to be a transparent process, and we either do a standalone request for qualifications or an RFQ, right? Or we will pull from what we have historically had on the books, which is a pre-qualified pool of artists. And that's one of the things that we're leaning into here for this workshop series, is that anyone who completes this workshop series will be able to be a part of that pre-qualified pool, aside from the call that we do for other artists. Doesn't mean you definitely get a commission, but it means that you are in the pool of artists that we will pull from for projects going forward. So most cities have, most big cities have a Present for Art program like this. Then on the flip side, we sometimes have funding for one-off programs. We've done this in the past for a program that we called Open Proposals, which was for artists and community-initiated projects. They could be temporary or permanent. And we really hope to do something like that again in the future. We also will have funding for a mural program. Of course, there's like all of the, Oakland Art Murmur, city's website. We finally have an Instagram account so we can post things there. And, working through our partners like Sorell and ABG to get the word out. But we also promote those through national channels. So where a lot of opportunities get posted is like on Cafe, call for entry. Well, we can go into that more later, like where are we doing that going forward? Submittable, Coda Works, publicartist.org. So there are all those standard places, and California Arts Council. One of the things that I hope to get from those of you that go through this process with us is, where else should we be reaching people, right? Because we know we have a lot of those like standard kind of like city bureaucratic processes in place, and we know that we need to change that up, and that's part of what we're doing together.
Yeah, and just think about that. These calls are going out on Cafe and Submittable nationally, and a lot of them are getting won by national artists, and that's just, in a way, kind of infuriating to me that like some artist from like, where Wisconsin would come here and win a project, like you guys should be winning these projects. Just to kind of like illustrate her point a little bit about what we're going to teach more in the workshop about civics is like these different city agencies, right? So there's Parks and Rec, and there's fire, and there's schools, and there's libraries. And like when they build a library, there's a public art component. When they remodel a school, there's a public art component. When they do a new fire station, there's a public art component. They're redoing a park, there's a public art component. So there's all these different agencies. It's not streamlined into one kind of thing. There's a bunch of different agencies that derive public art projects. So you kind of have to be aware of who's who and what's what and where these things are coming from. So that's part of the things that we want to get into. The other thing is the grant cycle. Like we want more people to understand the grants that are out there, the city-funded grants, the individual artist grants. There was an individual artist grant cycle that just ended January 12th. Did anybody apply for an artist grant? I know Taylor did, yeah. One person, so of all the people here, two, yeah, Q did. Okay, so that's a problem, right? Like, we should be applying for these grants, $10,000 to do your dream art project, but no one applied. We want to change that, right? Like, we want you guys to know that these opportunities are out there, and there's things that you could engage with the city to get funding to kind of do your dream concept, but you've got to be able to package it and sell it. So the grant cycle is another big part of it, and then gateway opportunities. So this is a really important one, and what does that mean? So there's the big public art projects, right? The hundreds of thousands and millions, big giant sculptures and what have you. But there's a lot of smaller gateway projects, and that's where I think a lot of you will probably start. And those are really important. And that could be a utility box or just some little thing that the city's putting out a call to. But it's important to get into that cycle and get into that kind of rhythm of applying and looking at these smaller projects as a way to establish your identity in the city and in their eyes, so that you're in the pool, they know who you are, you've done some little stuff. And looking at some of the other organizations like the Uptown Downtown CBD and the local BIDs, I don't know if you guys know what those are, but those are like downtown district associations that sometimes fund art projects as well. You've probably seen the ambassadors in downtown with the neon shirts on and walking around. So those are organizations that are involved in the city that have smaller projects at times. Is there any other gateway kind of examples you can think of?
I don't know if they're gateway, but I'm just gonna say, obviously California Arts Council, East Bay Community Foundation, Akanadi Foundation. Most of them that they do have, as we do through this Cultural Strategist program, a focus on connecting with our community, right? Like uplifting community, enhancing, operationalizing belonging, as Roberto says, aligned with our cultural plan, which is called, Belonging in Oakland. And so they aren't just in that regard like, oh, I decided this looked good and I want to, make a painting of it. They're intended to fund artists really helping to build the muscle, as you said, of those connections that Oaklanders have and feel about this place that we live in, right? It's how we're celebrating that, but also doing it in ways that are surprising, that really potentially enter the sublime. And that's part of what you can do that's different from like, oh, if someone said I decided to paint the side of my building, right? And just whatever paint they can find. It's how we bring you into that exercise of like creating, I'm not gonna say secret sauce, but like the stew, right? That is Oakland. And it's each one of you maintaining your individual vision, but then also figuring out how you sustain that while you navigate through some of what it takes to work with others, right? Because that's the challenge and the opportunity.
Great. And another big part of what we want to address is the public and private sectors, and the difference between the two. The city operates in a different operational format than the private sector does. But there's a lot of opportunities in the private sector, and we want you guys to be aware of that. You've probably heard of the 1% for public art for new development program. That means that every new building that's being built has to spend 1% of their construction budget on a public art piece. A lot of them have gone to different artists, not Oakland-based artists, but those projects are out there and they're big. When you think about a skyscraper going up, that's a $30 million building, and so 1% of that is $300,000, on an art project. So we want to talk about those opportunities, how to find them, how they come about, and all of that. So the public and private kind of opportunities is another thing we're going to dive into. Moving along to competing. So what does it find to take success in public art? Applying for a project, packaging your work properly, the professional standards. Like, this is a big part. It's not just having the vision. I mean, in all honesty, it's probably more functional business practices and being able to sell it well than it is like your actual creative vision, which sounds crazy, but I know a lot of artists that have the most amazing ideas, but they just don't have the professional practices to compete. And you have to address that in yourself. Like, okay, I want to do public art. I want to get some of these jobs. Well, you can't just come in on a whim and throw your name in the hat and think you're going to win. You have to make them believe that you can handle that money and that you're going to deliver on time and on budget and everything's going to be seamless and you're going to do a good job. And you make them believe by showing up as a professional. And so we really, this is a big part of what we're going to get into in the workshops, is really like packaging yourself, presenting yourself, writing about yourself, writing about your work, putting the whole documents together. Your art as a business, like essentially if you get a big project that's in the hundreds of thousands, like you're in a business relationship with the city now or the client, and you have to deliver. You got a bunch of deliverables, and they have to believe in you, and you have to believe in them. So there's a whole bunch of professional standards that we want to communicate to you guys and help you develop, because that's really what's going to get you to compete. It's having good ideas, it's having the vision, it's all that, but the professional standards and the packaging and your communication is probably the most important thing to make you really competitive in this field. You've really got to dig into that side of things to win some of these jobs. So that's a big part of our focus in the workshops here. Is there anything else? Oh, the long game, this is a good one. I wanted to bring that up. Maintaining positivity and responsibility for a long-term project. It's a really important note there, and it sounds kind of weird, but these projects can go on forever. Like imagine the city's remodeling a park. I mean, how long were they working on Snow Park? It just seemed like it was under construction forever. And the people that did the public art there, tell them that story. It was 10 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 10 years. They won the job 10 years ago and got delayed and had to redo this and redo that, and it finally got installed 10 years later. But that's public art. That's the field, right? Like you got to be ready for that. It's not like, oh, I won the thing, give me my check and hallelujah. It's like you're in it for the long game, and you got to know that. You got to know these things often take time. If you ever worked in the private sector on a construction project, always delayed. You get your stuff lined up and in a row, and you're like, yeah, I'm ready. And they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be 3 months. Deal with it. And you're like, I got fabricators and installers and all this stuff, and it all gets shuffled. So maintaining your positivity through that long course is a really, really important part of this field. Because if you start breaking down and your confidence starts cracking, that's not a good look, right? Like you're trying to build relationships for the long term with these people, and you want to be that person that delivered. So that on the next building, they're like, yeah, we have great experience with that artist, let's bring them back. But if you're like, oh man, everything's falling apart, it's delayed, so you have to maintain that positivity and that confidence and that professionalism through the whole way. And it might literally take 10 years. I mean, that's crazy, but that's what it is.
Yes, but which is not to say that you don't have help and support. I mean, and that's part of what my job is, and really, what Sorell does as well, which is to be your advocate and to, ask those questions. And if it is going to be delayed and it was caused by the city or the developer, well, is there some compensation for that? Cost of materials go up. I mean, so you're not hanging out there to dry on your own. I know you'll probably all leave if you think that's the way it goes down. But it is the reality. Like we made this joke earlier about, if you can't get through the application process sometimes is really like the test of, do you even have the temperament, not the talent or the intelligence to go through the process, because it doesn't happen overnight. And you are part of a team. I mean, and that's really exciting, and it takes you places that you might not even have anticipated. But it is also, it's a job, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Being an advocate for yourself. That's a really important part of it as well. I mean, we're preaching about the professional standards, and that's a big part of it. But it's also, standing up for yourself when things aren't going wrong, and asking the tough questions, and not being bulldozed by the problems that arise. You have to be a problem solver on the fly, and that's just the reality of the field. So the next section that we're going to get into is, let me scroll this down. Oops, sorry. Managing your project, right? So local fabricators, who's out there and who can you work with? What mediums and materials do they work in? How to work with them, how to engage with them. That's a big part of this field. All you muralists can do mosaic murals, but you're not going to hand carve the little tiles, right? So you've got to learn how to work with these fabricators and what they offer and what their needs are. You know, because a big part of it is going to be managing your partner's needs versus your needs, your fabrication partners, your installation partners. So partnerships, you know, advisors, project managers, understanding the site, and the criteria and the stakeholders. You know, the stakeholders is a really big one, because when you take on a big budget public art project, someone's funding it. So she talked earlier about the Tyrone Carney Park, which is in East Oakland. That's a park that's memorializing Tyrone Carney, who died in the Vietnam War. Some of his family members are on the selection panel. So you've got to understand who you're working with and what they want to get out of the project, and how to get your visionary needs met, but also understand that someone's giving you a bunch of money and they have a stake in what's going on. And so managing all these different stakes and how to interface with all the stakeholders is really important. You've got to be able to listen. You've got to be able to communicate. And understand that when you're working with a team that historically is backing an art project for something that maybe their family is connected, but it's your family that I'm honoring. And so how do I make those two things meet? And how do I get everyone to be on board on this project and smooth out the vision and make sure everyone's happy? You know, that's a big challenge. So, we're going to dig into that. Anything to add on that?
I'm just going to say that I think what you'll also find is that on city commissions, you have more room to do storytelling, because the city wants to engage in that storytelling with the community where the work is happening. Like with Tyrone Carney, and we all know that sometimes when you're working in private sector new construction, that the stakeholders, generally speaking, may include the developers, and they're looking for something that they, would define as timeless and, that appeals to anyone and everyone. So there's good and bad in that. It just is something that you need to be aware of and thinking about it in terms of what are the opportunities that are out there, and where do you feel inspired to do your best work? Because there are different kinds of opportunities, right? And I think that the artists who succeed in this field are the ones that can really navigate through all of those, the temporary and the permanent, and the public commissions and the private commissions, and understand that basically, yes, they're all different stakeholders. You have a different client in each case, but it's still you channeling your vision, through that listening process.
Yeah. And working through the budgets, this is a really important aspect of what we do too. I think that when you say, okay, this is a big public art project, I'm a finalist, the budget's $250, I'm gonna do this thing and I'm gonna walk away with 200 grand, you're never gonna win if that's your mindset. You've got to understand kind of the general parameters of how the budgets work. And a city-funded project often comes with guidelines for what the artist fee is to be, and it's typically somewhere between 15 and 30%. I mean, it kind of changes, but you have to understand, like, okay, 250 is not for me. It's for me to fabricate, install, insurance, project management, development, renderings, insurance, legal. It's for all these things. So you've got to kind of work backwards through these budgets and outline it for yourself and present a budget that the funder is going to believe in. So just because it's a big number doesn't mean like, woo, I've got that number. Like, you have to present a budget that makes sense for everybody, and then you have to execute on that budget. So we're going to dive into that. And then also working with architects and engineers. A lot of the time in public art, there's a major architectural engineering aspect to it. It's not just like, oh, I got this vision and, we throw it up. That piece that I showed earlier with Jet, the sculpted wall relief, crazy engineering that went into that. I mean, we learned so much. I mean, there was just so much architectural needs for them to be able to hang that stuff on the wall. There was crazy cantilever steel engineering stuff that we had to figure out. And so understanding like your site, like, okay, it's going in this park, I've got this sculpture or this mosaic or whatever it is, can the wall handle the weight? Can the ground handle the weight? You know, who's dealing with that? Am I dealing with that, or are they dealing with that? So there's a number of engineering kind of needs that you've got to think about. And when we talk about fabricators and project managing, yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about that. So knowing your local fabricators is a really big part of competing in this field locally. So on the top left there, you've got Lenahan Glass. You guys have probably seen that building. It's 11th and Broadway. Looks kind of like just architectural sculpted, but it's fabricated glass that was done by an artist, made in West Oakland. I'm sure all of you feel like you could have designed that, you know? So it's knowing who these fabricators are, what they have to offer. The bottom left here, this is Magnolia Editions. This was a private development at 11th and Webster in Chinatown. Julia Chang. Yeah. You know, beautiful kind of Asian style work, but it's fabricated at Magnolia Editions, which is in West Oakland. So you can design this kind of work and it's permanent public art. So it's knowing who the fabricators are, what they do, what they're able to do for you, and how to work with them. On the right there is Haibikozo, another artist fabrication team that does these amazing pieces. So there's a major understanding fabrication and partners element to really being in this field. It's not just about your vision, it's how you work with the fabricators, what they bring to the table, what you bring to the table, and how are you going to work together. And then on the next slide, this is also Magnolia Editions. This happened at the new Chinatown station in San Francisco. So they made all these fabricated tiles and did this big public art installation. So I'm sure all of you feel like I could have designed that, right? Like not necessarily that style, but you can imagine your artwork in this format, right? So it's possible. It's just knowing how these fabricators work and what they do. And a lot of the time, the fabricators are going to be your best asset to winning a job. Because if you've got this visionary artwork and you've got to compete with the city and convince them to fund this big project that they're going after, the fabricator that's attached to it has a history with the city. They've done a bunch of these public art projects. So if you've got this great idea and you're trying to win the project, and Magnolia Editions or Lenahan or Haibikozo is attached to it, well, that gives them an extra layer of confidence that you can do this because they know that fabricator can do it. So if you are paired with an accomplished fabricator, that's going to make a lot of sense and put you in a better ability to compete.
Yeah, and I think it's good to point out with that project that the artist Claire Rojas, again, is really like part of the mission school. This was not how she started out, right? This was something over time that she was selected as part of a pre-qualified pool call in San Francisco to, you know, be in that pool of artists, and that meant that the arts panel that selected her could imagine her work being translated into other materials, and then the staff, you know, at the Arts Commission, or, you know, people in our positions could imagine how you might make that leap. And then relying on that fabricator relationship to help you tease those details out. But part of what the fabricators are also looking for is people who they think have, you know, the temperament to sit there and brainstorm and kind of tinker with those ideas with them, right? To imagine like, well, if I want to change these shapes or do this, I mean, even the one that looks so minimalist and simplistic, the glass, that's a glass artist, Daniel Wintrick, who spent his entire career has been about making glass. But what he did there was he got involved with Lenahan Glass and he started experimenting and basically invented a new form of doing this kiln glass. They bought a new kiln to work on this project with him. And it was because of building that trust, right? So that's like, it's very minimalist, which is actually part of what the architects wanted. Just FYI. They're like, no color, nothing, you know, we want it to just blend into the building. So his way of responding to that was to do something that they hadn't done, right? It's kind of in a way subtly one-up them to do something they hadn't done, but he had to build that trust with the fabricators, with the client, and with the engineers in order to make that happen. So he had more experience under his belt to do that. But it's more about how you try to push that envelope, right? And having the confidence in your vision to be able to do that, and then to rely on the expertise of others to translate the ideas. So that's all I wanted to say, because again, these are artists who do not start out doing work like this.
Right. All right, and then nuts and bolts, right? So understanding your fabricator's needs, how art and construction work together, contracts and subs, legal, artist rights, your responsibilities, the City of Oakland Public Art Checklist, dealing with unanticipated delays, insurance requirements. These are like the functional stuff, right? So we've got to cover all that too. This is stuff that we're going to dive into. We want everyone to be prepared to compete on this level. And these are all little topics that we have to really discuss in depth for you to understand, because they come up in the applications, and they especially come up if you win. So, you know, it's great for everyone to compete, but ultimately what we want is you to win. And when you win, all of this stuff comes up, and it comes up big time, and you've got to be prepared to deal with it. So this is a big aspect of what we're going to jump into in the workshop series. And also materials and maintenance plans. When you do a public art piece, that's a big component of it. You know, like the responsibility of maintaining it doesn't typically land on the artist, but if you made the piece, you've got to have a plan on how it's maintained, and you've got to present that plan to the city and to the funder and, you know, to the client if it's private. So the nuts and bolts kind of structural aspect of it is a big part. And so keep going there, Trent. Oh, delivering, packaging your concept. Yeah, so like I was saying before, a huge part of this is showing up and communicating in a way that's really effective. So you've got to package your vision, you've got to communicate it, you've got to write about it. If you win, you're going to have to render it. You're going to have to present this concept. And a lot of the time, it's not in person. You know, so you've got to do this in a format that can be sent around and reviewed by a lot of different people. And if your presentation looks amateurish and sloppy, the chances of you winning are a lot less. So packaging your work in a way that's, you know, competitive, you know, that's viable, that looks professional. You know, that's another big part of winning these jobs. And then in-person presentation. You know, when you get into the final rounds of a project, if you're one of 3 finalists, you're probably going to be invited to present at some panel and talk about your work, and you've got to be able to do that. And you don't have to be a great public speaker, of course it helps, but you've got to be able to communicate your ideas, your vision, your partners, you know, who's involved. We want to help educate you and train you on just showing up in that way and being able to deliver those messages effectively. And completing our workshop. Okay, so tonight is really an overview. Okay, this is all the stuff that we're going to cover. It's going to take 4 months. There's going to be 5 sessions. All of those headings that we talked about are going to be individual sessions where we're going to really jump into those topics and get granular and try to teach you guys as much as we can. If you complete the whole workshop series, you'll be added to Oakland's pre-qualified pool of artists. We are going to help you develop an imaginary concept, complete with a professional rendering. So you're going to have to come with an idea. Imagine you've got the funding and you've got the project, and go through the steps, and we're going to get that concept rendered. And the goal is, the thing with public art is it's almost impossible to win a project if you have never done a project. And it's a real chicken or the egg thing, and it's frustrating for everybody. And so what we're trying to do with this is give you guys the tools, give you the training, and then do a fake concept that has a rendering, so that when you apply for a real project, even if you haven't done one, you can say, I went through this workshop, this is my idea, these are the fabricators, this is the rendering. It's kind of like a fake project, so that you can illustrate that you're ready to compete on this level. So we're going to provide that for you if you go through the whole series. Also get what we're calling a certificate of acknowledgement from Kristen, which is kind of like a vague reference letter, but essentially it's going to state that you went through this workshop, that she saw your work, that you are ready to compete on a high level in public art, and you have her support, you have the city's support, and you know what you're doing. So what we're trying to do is kind of get you over the hump to where you can show, I know what it takes. I know I've got to pair with fabricators, I know what the legal requirements are, I know how to conceptualize this, I know how to project manage it, I know what the insurance requirements are, I know who my fabricators are, I know who my installers are, look at my beautiful rendering, I know what I'm doing. That's what we want you guys to leave the workshop with, so that when you go try to apply for one of these projects, even though you don't have a big history of public art, you can show them, look what I did, it's right here. It's fake, but it's real.
I call it's like the UC extension classes, right? You get like your certificate at the end. And like, okay, yeah, we'll take a chance on you, right?
Right. And like we said, being ready to compete. So that's really what I'm saying. It's like you're going through all this stuff to understand what it really takes to actually compete for the larger public art projects, because we want you guys to compete. And then, just to kind of close this off, is this for you? Okay, so all of you signed up for the workshops, and I'm super happy that you did, and I love that you're all here. This is a great crowd, and all these amazing Oakland artists. So many I know that a lot of you guys that I know can do this, but I really want you guys to think about this. Okay, so this isn't actually the workshop, this is the overview. We're going to send out another email on Monday to ask you if you want to go through this workshop series. And I'm putting it to you all now. I want you to, take what we've said here tonight and think about it. And really look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, like, am I really ready for this? And am I committed to this? Because I don't want you to be like, oh yeah, that sounds great, and workshop and learn whatever. But if you're not really ready to dig into the administrative level, the professional practices level, if you're not really committed to seeing this through, then don't do it. We'll probably do this again next year, because you're going to fund it again, right, Roberto? Okay. I just want you to be real with yourselves. This is a lot of work. It's a lot of administrative work. It's not the fun stuff. Your visionary idea, we all got those. You're all amazing artists that have amazing visionary ideas. We get that. This is about the other side. This is about the professional standards, the professional practices, the grind, the admin, because that's really actually what it takes. So I'm asking you guys to think about, do I want to do that? Am I committed to doing that? And if all of you say yes and sign up, great. We'll do everybody. We want as many people as we can get. But I just want you to be real with yourselves, because I don't want people to come in and kind of be in a little bit and then fall out. If you're going to do this with us, we're going to invest the time. We're going to invest the energy. The whole ABG team, we're going to have, weekly openings for people to come in and talk to us and develop their ideas. We're putting a lot into this. So we want people that are actually committed to seeing it through. So I just want you to ask yourselves, is this really for me? Or am I just fantasizing about my life as an artist? And if you're really into this and you see this as being a part of your future, then please come to the workshops. You're going to get a lot out of it. We want all of you to be able to compete at a higher level in public art. That's what we want. That's our goal. We want all of you to be added to Oakland's pre-qualified pool. But we don't want to just put you in for you to be on a list. We want you to be in there and ready to compete and ready to win. Not just a name in the bucket. A viable candidate to win a project. That's what we're trying to educate, train, and develop artists to be real candidates to win. And that's going to take a lot of work from you. So if you're into it and you want to do it, then we want you. But just ask yourself that question before you commit to the workshop series. So I hope all of you join. Really appreciate you all coming out. So good to see all of you. Thank you.